I married a doctor, so we must be on easy street, you're thinking. Big money rolling in, vacations on the drug companies. Not so. I got in at the wrong end of her career. Let me tell you a story. I met Karen when we were both going to different community colleges to save money. She was smart, even brilliant, and could talk well about almost anything she had ever read about. She was also naive, maybe innocent or trusting would be the better word. Not so good with practical things. The tuition at junior colleges is a fraction of what it is at four-year institutions, and money was a big consideration. My dad is a general contractor with a grade school education and further study at the School of Hard Knocks. Trouble was he kept getting hard knocks. He got a lot of work but didn't make much money at it. Of course, I had to work for him as a kid, and I thought I could see all his flaws. He was a bull-of-the-woods guy, didn't listen well, and got rid of people who were, in his opinion, too smart for themselves, and often smarter than he was. Unfortunately, he didn't realize he needed smart people and generally had at least one more job going on than he could manage by himself. As a result, it was the rare job that came in under budget, and he self-limited his company's growth. I was not going to follow his example. Getting an education was my ticket out. As it happened, Karen and I met in summer school a couple of months before we were both transferring to Massachusetts. I took advantage of a self-directed studies program and took some mechanical and civil engineering courses. Chemistry, history, civics. You get the drift. I took overloads because it didn't cost more, and as long as I got A, B, or better, I was happy. With that scattergun of courses, I learned to write, think linearly, and spot the heart of an issue. I knew a great deal in areas that interested me and screw all in areas that didn't. Karen was taking pre-med, took a light load, and went for all A's, which is good for doctors. We don't want a doctor who knows 70 to 80% about what's wrong with you. On the other hand, I looked at college as a trade school for life. I wanted to be the contractor my dad never could. I wanted to know all that I needed to know, and a bit more besides. We both graduated with bachelor's degrees together. Karen was really lucky. With no relatives in the medical field and no influential recommendations, a medical school in Philadelphia accepted her and gave her a modest scholarship. We moved to Philadelphia and got married that summer. I was out from under my dad, trading his iron yoke for her velvet one. Her father clearly saw her stellar future, and certain of my eventual bankruptcy and failure, impressed upon her the importance of a prenuptial agreement. He also gave us a hefty wedding present of a 20% down payment on the house of our choice. Make that her choice. What the agreement said was basically what she owned and or earned were hers personally. If we divorced for any reason, no alimony or child support, and we kept what we had earned for ourselves. So the wedding gift was really to her alone, and as he thought we were not likely to buy a house anytime soon, the gift was off in the indefinite future. No one ever accused him of being free with his money. I agreed, but for reasons of symmetry, I insisted it be changed to be the same for both of us. She couldn't get child support, alimony, or my money. I also suggested that we not be responsible for each other's debts. She balked at that because she had huge school debts, but I pointed out that if I, a contractor, went belly up, and the creditors got through the corporate shield, she could be liable for that debt too. End of argument. Her dad was delighted that his family was protected from my unsuitability. Well, screw him. We were living 300 miles away, and I would only see him infrequently. We started our married life with separate credit cards and checking accounts. As the worldly one, I ended up running the finances, making money, doing the bills, and signing the checks, hers and mine. I also set up a system to track our income and where it went. She earned very little during school, so the income division was sort of theoretical. Philadelphia was good to me. I found a good job with a contractor and spent 2 years learning the area and supporting the two of us. Of course, she was racking up huge, to me at least, student loans, all of which she would have to start paying off after graduation. But don't worry. Be happy. Doctors make big money. I launched out on my own against my wife's counsel. My father-in-law called me a fool. I can't really hold it against him, as my dad said the same thing. I am proud to say I made money from the start. It helped that Karen and I matched each other in the number of hours we devoted to our careers. It was a prodigious effort both of us were making. Time spent together was precious. As I could be more flexible in my hours, I made sure that I was around whenever she had time off. It was hard, but we were young, strong, and in love. She timed her pregnancy so she would deliver a month after graduation and hit her target within 2 weeks. A lovely baby girl. Her residency was worse than med school, as far as time demands were concerned. She was an underpaid slave at the hospital, a handmaiden devoted to Asclepius, the god of medicine. I deliberately mispronounced it as handmaiden to the god of syphilis, and opined the A was for Alfred, Fred for short. So Fred Syphilis became the guy who was causing all of the screw-ups and problems in medicine. Looking back, I'm not sure that our marriage really survived her residency. You read about residents screwing each other on the night shift. I'm sure she did not. Because she was so exhausted day after day. The only difference between screwing her and an ice block would have been the temperature. It was a hard, lonely time for me, made bearable by my daughter, and a demanding growing business. Unfortunately, we got used to the other not being around. Her internship and later her medical practice easily consumed 55 to 60 hours per week, plus the hours were erratic. I continued to take care of our daughter. I keep a day-minder diary for both work and home life. It was a job keeping track of all of the scheduled stuff for my daughter, my wife, and myself. Daycare was essential, of course. It really bothered me that my daughter was with strangers so much. I moved my office to a storefront I bought cheap, across the street from the daycare center. I hired a grandmotherly woman with the grandmotherly name of Mildred as my office manager. While I needed her around full-time to answer the phone and such, there really wasn't enough work to keep her occupied. It was her idea that she would watch my daughter for the last 3 hours of the workday. My daughter was delighted, and so was I. Emancipation Day came for the wife with the end of her internship. We spent a couple of weeks at the shore before she started in as a family physician in a small practice in the near suburbs. She was hot to buy a house. The banks and mortgage brokers were offering no money down mortgages, no credit check. She showed them the pay stub and picked out a new house. I had little choice, as she pointed out. It was her money. She wanted a new McMansion, and I wanted a pre-war house, one built between 1900 and 1940. We got the new, cheaply built box about a 45-minute commute from my office. Her father's wedding present became her end-of-residency present as well, 2 for 1. It amounted to a $30,000 down payment on a house. It was a goodly chunk of money for him, but his daughter had stars in her eyes and wanted a $700,000 mansion. His contribution just about covered taxes and closing costs. At 7% interest, the mortgage was $4,500 per month, plus taxes, heat, upkeep, car, and various insurances boosted the monthly bill to $6,500. Her student loan payments were another $5,000 a month. I tried to get her to lower her sights to a more modest $250,000 to $300,000 house. But honey, this is what I have been working for all these years. After years of eating beans, you want to spend everything on a house and continue eating beans. That's nuts. We're young. Now's the time to enjoy life, not be tied hand and foot to a huge house. I lost. Still worse, over the next 3 years, she took out equity loans to furnish it with ostentatious, poor-quality furniture. It galled me that the fine traditional furniture I inherited from my uncle, all handmade by him, was relegated to my den and a spare bedroom. Going this far into debt was also nuts. I watched debt like a hawk in my business, as undercapitalization can bring you down quicker than anything except stupidity. Business was good. No, it was very good. I was doing well, and I wanted more time with my family. so I decided to move my office closer to my home. Opportunity knocked at my door. I was working on a big project restoring a great Gatsby-era mansion. I had billed over $350,000 to date, and that was just the structural and exterior work. Unfortunately, the owner went down in the financial debacle and had to sell. I had a mechanic's lien on the house, and he didn't have the money to clear it. He still owed me $110,000, although about 30 of that was for materials contracted for, but not yet needed. There was a lovely gatehouse and carriage shed on the property, about 10 minutes from my house. It sat more or less by itself on an acre of land that was mostly rocky hillside, but with a nice view. It was connected to the main estate by an unused 25-foot right-of-way that snaked up the hillside. It was easy to cut this property off from the mansion. The buildings looked to be in much worse condition than they were, so I offered to buy it for what he owed me, plus $45,000 cash. He jumped for it, and I finished up the work I had in progress and set up a straw company to purchase the property. I converted the carriage shed to offices, but as it was a historical property, I kept the original exterior, including the arched double doors. This also preserved the option of using it in the future as a garage. With my new office habitable, I began renovating the gatehouse. In the months ahead, when a crew had slack time, I put them to work on the house. It was typical of my wife's ability to tune out my business doings. When I showed her the new office, she assumed I was renting it. She was uninterested, didn't ask a single question, not even how much I was paying. She said the place looked old-fashioned and they should pull it down, build something nice. Sad that such a really big thing in my life would be something so uninteresting to her. That was the day I seriously wondered about my wisdom in having married her. I thought about ending the marriage. Well, there are ups and downs in all marriages. I made sure I praised her and paid attention to her, and hoped for the best. Socially, we had a number of couples we enjoyed. Some doctors, some not. Mostly from the comfortably off business or civic leaders, some nonprofit managers. While not rich, I guess we certainly weren't really middle class. If you didn't know the debt load she carried, you'd think we had it made. As you might expect, some doctors couldn't see themselves socializing with me, and some engineers and business types couldn't relate to my wife, the doctor. Gradually, however, my wife's preferences and social activities revolved mostly around members of the medical community. We found a few couples agreeable to us both. I was also beginning to sense a shift in our relationship. More and more, I was the home and family support person. Any change in her schedule, I had to adjust mine and cover for her. It was what I had always done, only more so. I had to drop what I was doing and pick up my daughter because the doctor was running late. She would agree to do something with me or our daughter, and at the last minute cancel. I agree a doctor is important to lots of people, but we were her family. It was obvious who came first. Mildred was not complaining, but she was doing more kid care than I thought appropriate. It is the nature of modern life to be interrupted by others. I get calls from job sites and suppliers after hours. I have 2 cell phones, one work, one personal. My wife carries her phone. Easily 99% of the after-hours calls I get are settled right then, or in a couple of minutes on the phone. For years, other than those times she was on call, the same was true of my wife. But in late summer it changed. Her phone would go off, and she would have to drop everything and run off to the hospital. Part of being a doctor, wouldn't you say? But she was a family physician in a largish practice, and they took turns being on call. It certainly seemed she was taking more than her share of turns. One Saturday in late September, we both spent a hot afternoon doing yard work and outside house maintenance. Dirty and smelly, we showered up before supper. I got turned down for a quickie, but with a promise for a good tumble later that evening. Works for me. We were sitting on the patio after supper, having coffee, listening to the happy calls and shrieks of children at play. This is the life, I thought. About 7:30, her beeper went off. Karen, in exasperation, looked at it, stood up, and said, I have to go into the hospital. I'd better change first. She looked nice, clean white t-shirt with a big red cross and saying give blood for life. Appropriate, huh? White shorts and red high-gloss sneakers made her elegantly casual. You just showered and changed into fresh clothes. Why would you change them again when you'll still have to change yet again into scrubs when you get there? She looked distracted. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, I've got to go. I'll be home when I get back. A little after 8, my daughter Carrie came in tired and dirty from heavy play. You are such a mess. We might as well take you out for ice cream. Then a bath for you. Squeals of laughter, followed by a call to Jennifer, the best friend of the summer. We had to drive over to the other side of town, no Dairy Queen for us, because only Smedley's ice cream parlor, which served homemade ice cream, would do. Girl after my own heart. I was sitting on a picnic bench out in front of Smedley's, licking a pistachio nut ice cream cone, casually admiring the moms in their summer minimalist outfits, when I saw a truly rare sight. An Indian motorcycle, the chief model, circa 1948, brilliant yellow with white skirts and shining chrome. It rumbled by with a delightful throaty burble of exhaust new cycles can only dream of imitating. I recognized it because my older brother had a detailed die-cast model of 1 year ago, and I covet it to this day. The driver was a fattish guy, slumped in the seat in matching jeans and a jean jacket with black leather boots. The woman was riding pillion and tightly hugging the rider. She had on an American fly helmet and face shield, a white Red Cross, Give Blood t-shirt, blue jeans, and shiny red track shoes. The summer evening was cooling now. She'll wish she'd worn a jacket before the evening's done. Acting carefree and happy after that was difficult. I doubt the children noticed my mood as they more than made up for in laughter and gaiety. I felt ashamed to say that I was glad I had forgotten to mail her quarterly student loan payment on Friday. About 2/3 of that money had come from my funds. It would have been throwing money away. That was also the end of me paying for anything that was hers. Having to pay the full load for her house, car, and stuff would drain her checking account, and the savings account attached to it in record time. I kept paying most of her bills, but used her checking account exclusively. Monday morning, I hired a divorce lawyer. He promised to look over the prenup agreement, but he knew the lawyer who wrote it, and his expectation was that it would be tight, adding that anything can be broken. Documentation of the adultery was unnecessary, but it might help as a bludgeon if there was a child custody issue, but it was an outside chance in any event. Moms almost always get the kid. The second call was to a friend of mine who was into antique autos. Indian chief motorcycles are both valuable and rare. Joyriding one is nearly a Jay Leno sort of thing. No hesitation from him. It was almost certainly owned by Dr. Alfred Hale. I didn't know him, but knew the name. Big shot at the hospital. Well, that cleared that up. The third call was to an investigator recommended by my insurance agent for my business. Samir Patel was the guy's name. Sam for short. I saw no reason for him to follow wifey. I was reasonably sure she was only screwing one person. Alfred Cephalus Hale might be another story, and I wanted revenge. I told him I wanted the goods on Dr. Hale, and gave him what I knew. I expected to have to pay extra for prompt work, but things must have been slow for the guy. He cut me a break and promised to get right on it. I paid $3,000 deposit for the first week to get him started, asking for photos, audio, and video if possible. I also suggested he cover his tracks well, as Hale had the big bucks to be trouble when he realized he was being screwed with. The fourth call was to one of my site managers, telling him to start pulling workmen, and we needed to finish the gatehouse at least enough to get an occupancy permit. Other than that, it was a routine day. I tried to keep everything normal. I guessed I needed about 2 to 3 weeks to conveniently turn out the lights on our marriage. That evening, during our quiet time drinking a cup of coffee, wifey announced, "I'll be going to a medical conference in New York Friday and Saturday night the week after next. It's sponsored by Merck, and I need to go. Where are you staying?" one of New York's best hotels. The Greenpoint Plaza. God knows what it would cost normally. I pulled out my iPhone and looked it up. You're kidding. Greenpoint is in Brooklyn, and so is the hotel. It looks okay, but nothing special. Here, look at the picture. $110 a night. Let me see. There must be some mistake. That's a nothing. Not a Crown Plaza or anything. Oh, I got the hotel wrong. I'll double-check. Anyway, I'm sure the date is correct. That night we had marital sex for the first time in God knows when. I consider it a personal weakness that I initiated it. I had fished out a condom, just like in the old days, and rolled it on just before entry. And she never noticed. The Wednesday before her conference weekend was very eventful. I met with my lawyer to go over the draft of the divorce papers. He suggested we get my business financials undercover so if the prenup agreements, which he thought were airtight, were somehow breached, I wouldn't lose so much. He had doubts about the child support. Prenup or no prenup. I protested that it was my child, and I wanted to support her. The lawyer set me straight. Give all the support you want, but avoid the court mandating anything. My accountant said he needed a few weeks to bury the cash reserve I had in the business. I joked that we contractors usually wanted to pull money out of thin air, not the other way, and told him to get 75% of it hidden in a week. Later in the afternoon, I met with the investigator in person for the first time. He chose a Starbucks. Turns out he works out of his house, and as he said, it was also better if some people didn't know where to find him. Mr. Harlow, this is Rich. A first in my very long experience. This was indeed a first, and that is a rare thing, I am telling you. Your Dr. Hale rents a particular motel room, always on Mondays and Thursdays, and sometimes Saturdays. Same room every time. Now this is the interesting part. Listen to this. Last Thursday, he took this woman into the room, and they stayed there from noon to about 1:30. Here's her picture. I never saw her in my life. Nice redhead, I thought. Her name is Eileen McCormick, and she works for one of those visiting nurse companies. She had such a sticker on her car. I have her personnel information here for you as well. The curtains on the window were tight, so I couldn't get any pictures, but I have the full audio. They came out all lovey-dovey. Here's another picture of them. He went back to the hospital. Now here's the big surprise. I couldn't believe it. At 6 p.m., he drove back to the same motel, arriving at 6:15, and went into the same room. At 6:25, this woman drove up and went in his room, just like the last one. He slid the picture over. Sorry, it's your wife. But you already knew that, didn't you? We have the audio for this assignation as well. Welcome to the world of Viagra. First time I've come across a guy meeting up with two women the same day in the same room. Turns out he does this twice a week or more. I gained access to the room, and as you instructed, set it up for sound and video. Somebody will be in the area recording what goes on when he is inside. Here is a disc with your wife and one other woman, who we do not know, as she arrived with Dr. Hale. I thanked him. Sam, if the crap hits the fan, is there any way this can be traced to you? I'm serious here, possibly serious money looking for the source of these pictures. Nah, I'd tell you that they would never find me unless you told them, but I am careful. You'll find none of my fingerprints on those pictures, nor anything in the room. I told him to keep recording until further notice, but forget the outside stuff. Paid another $3,000 in cash, and left with a sour taste in my mouth that wasn't from the coffee. The next day, I closed joint credit card accounts, explaining to Karen that it was to get better control of our funds, and did the final positioning of funds. Each week, I got Samir's set of videos on a CD in the mail. He had 2 cameras, and presumably 2 microphones. Of course, I watched all the tapes, but the ones of my wife I examined with care. I obsessively listened to every word, watched closely every gesture. I think it was cathartic for me. The more I watched, the more distant my feelings for her became. Physically, I guess he was okay for his age. Older than me by a good deal. 15, 20 years. Clearly never exercised. His tool was much the same as mine. Similar amount of body hair. I was glad to see he had about 4 or 5 more inches on his waistline than me. He generally led the sessions with all the women. He told them what he wanted, and they did it with enthusiasm. She complied with alacrity, doing everything he asked of her, no hesitation, happy to experience whatever he wanted. How I wish she would be that way with me. Upon reflection, I realized that perhaps I shared some responsibility for our lousy sex life. When the wife said no, I didn't insist. I let her be the gatekeeper in the bedroom. Now Hale was pushing her, and she was happily yielding. Simple, really. We all want to please our partner. Maybe it's more a matter of what my expectations were. And as I could see, they were too low. Work on the gatehouse was coming along nicely. With a week to go, I called the lawyer and learned he was on vacation. I told his assistant that I wanted the papers by next Wednesday as promised. She assured me I would have them. I was set to file for divorce and move out of her house and her life. Our daughter was at the neighbor's. We were sipping a nice wine on the patio on the evening before her medical conference. I probably shouldn't have bothered, but I did try one last time to preserve our marriage. So do you think my wife will ever come back? Huh? What are you talking about? I'm talking about you. You've been moving away from Carrie and me for quite some time now. It's like you're moving out of the family. I just wondered who you found to take our place, and when or if you're coming back. There was a long silence. I was about to get up and leave when she replied in a quiet voice. He's a doctor at the hospital. I can't tell you his name, but I'm pretty sure we're in love. That it's the real thing. You can't tell right away, can you? Emotions are funny that way. I'll know in a month or so. And no, I won't. I can't give him up. I'm sorry, but there it is. I still love you, but... She trailed off into silence. I said nothing. Chris, aren't you going to say anything? You haven't finished. You were saying you loved me, but, and I'd like to know how long, how often, and most of all why. What does he have that I don't? Okay, this is complicated, but I love you, or what I always thought was love. With him, it's different. I've been intimate with him for a month, maybe 6 weeks. There is no why. It just happened. He's not better or worse than you, just different. So every time your phone goes off, you're either off to help and comfort the sick and dying, or Dr. Syphilis has a hard-on, and his 304 needs to take care of it. Look, give me your hand a minute. She extended her left hand and took mine. Chris, don't be like that. It's not like that. I just have to be sure, and it's only a few more weeks. Please. I held her hand with both of mine and cleanly slid her wedding and engagement rings off of her finger. I don't think it registered until I took my wedding band off and dropped it in her hand. Hey, give them back. I can't go without them. They're mine. Chris, people will notice. Give them back. Not my problem. I slipped 2 coins out of my pocket, stood up, and threw them way the hell out into the yard. In the failing light, she would glimpse something shiny flying through the air and assume it was $9,000 worth of jewelry. So go find the damn things. If you wanted to keep the marriage they represented, there wouldn't be this problem. Anyway, you'd probably be surprised how many people know what you've been doing. The 2 of you are well known about town. So tell them. Tell them all how lucky you were to get onto the big doctor's well-used tool. Tell them he loves you more than life itself, that he's gonna divorce his wife and marry you. Just waiting for the right time to tell her. Fine by me. Chris, cut out the crude talk. How did you know that? I laughed. Beneath all that education, you're a dumb idiot. Every married guy tells his sex buddies he loves her and is going to leave his wife. It keeps her having sex with him. Women who imagine themselves virtuous pretend it's necessary to reach a long-term commitment. An honest woman does it because it's fun, and she enjoys the ride, and 304s do it for money. Anyway, sometimes the guy does divorce his wife. I'm guessing. Maybe 1 in 5, because the marriage was in the shitter anyway. And sometimes he even marries his sex buddy of the week. Maybe that's 1 in 5 too. So the chances are, 24 out of 25 times, he dumps her. But who knows? Maybe it is true love you have, and you'll marry him, and the two of you, who merely adulterated your last marriages, will be faithful in your new ones, and in your free time, go down into the cellar and dissect corpses together. She went up to our bedroom, slamming doors as she went. What the hell did she think my reaction would be? I put together the reality package I planned to leave for her. It listed the household costs, her net income, minus her student loan payments, minus her mortgage payments, minus taxes, minus car payments, minus utilities, minus insurance for car and house. It came out in minus numbers. She was in the hole by $1,000 a week, with no food, gas, or anything else. I timed the bill payments so that on D-Day, all her bills would be paid and leave essentially no cash in her accounts. The next morning, she assured me again it really was a medical conference and headed out the door. I canceled all of our joint credit cards. She had one for business, so she was not completely without a source of funds. I made copies of the bills and of our income tax returns. She would need them. I listed the name and number of the oil burner guy, the lawn guy, the snow plowing guy, a general handyman. Looking over the tax returns, I was pleased that for the last 3 years, despite efforts to reduce and hide my income, I made more than she did. Good. Well, maybe that was too much information for her right now. She was gone. And at this point, I wanted her to stay gone. Why give her a reason to want to stay? I pulled the income tax returns from the pile. She'd get them eventually. The movers arrived at 11 a.m. on Friday. My shop took 1 truck, and most of the movers' time. I took all of my uncle's furniture, plus some family pieces, my bureau, and the contents of my closet. I was such a nice guy. I had a cleaning service come in to sweep, vacuum, and scrub away all evidence of my life there. I stacked her financial stuff in a box, tossed the current bills on top, and a second box was for miscellaneous junk we found while emptying drawers and cleaning the floors. I set them on a kitchen chair and left the divorce papers I had signed on the kitchen table. I also left a note on the refrigerator and closed the door on a chapter of my life at 4 p.m. Friday afternoon. My daughter and I went kid bedroom shopping Saturday and got her set up in her bedroom at my place. The newly renovated house was looking great. Insulated, new thermal paint windows that looked like the old ones. Original plasterwork with paint and stenciling restored. Original kitchen restored and augmented a bit to suit modern needs, and everything freshly stripped and varnished or painted. What a great job the crews had done. I would like to think that they did a great job out of respect they held for me, or it could be that jobs were really difficult to find right now, and I had quite a payroll. Sunday night, Karen called at 10 p.m. in hysterics. I listened long enough to know she discovered she was bankrupt. I told her, "Hey, don't cry on my shoulder. Not my problem. I don't care anymore. Take your troubles to Dr. Syphilis. Let him be tender, helpful, and give you money." More shrieks of rage, remorse, and hurt. "Look, you're not coherent. I'll come by tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, and we can talk this over. Carrie is fine. She's with me right now. I figure we'll share custody. We can work around your problem of on-call for come calls and whatnot. Don't call again between now and 7 p.m. tomorrow." I hung up. The phone rang immediately. It was her. "Look, don't call Carrie either. She's been in bed for an hour now, and as hysterical as you are, you'll scare the crap out of her. Be prepared to tell me precisely when, what day, what time you want her to stay with you. I need to know when I see you tomorrow. Good night." Seemed she expected me to plod along until she found another tool she liked better. Apparently, it never occurred to the doctor that I might make up my mind. Pete Key, right? Don't appreciate the water until the well runs dry. What the hell did she think I would do? Just imagine her saying, "Chris, thanks for cooking a nice dinner. Help the kid, what's her name, with her homework. After you do the dishes, I know you have to be up by 6 to go to work, so don't wait up. Syphilis just called, and he's really needing some dirty sex, and I can't keep him waiting." Saying that would certainly make every husband want to stay around. Sure it would. Dumb witch. 7 p.m. came around. Just to piss her off, I got an Italian sub at a very good Italian deli. Crispy crust artisan bread on the side, so it wouldn't get soggy. I showed up late, with particularly dirty and sweaty work clothes and boots, knocked on the door. The grungy clothes were a bit of theater. I worked up a good sweat doing landscaping at my new house. She looked nice, low-cut blouse, wearing a thin lace bra, short skirt, barefoot. She saw the bag in my hand. "Oh, how nice. You brought something for me. I guess we're both sorry. Come on in. I made supper." "You got things wrong. I'm not sorry. I am delighted I found out what you were before I wasted more years. Nothing was said about supper. I brought this for myself. You do as you please. But I cooked a nice meal for you." I looked over at the table. "I was thinking, you didn't cook anything. You picked it out pre-cooked at the grocery. Must have just come from Syphilis. She never dressed like that for me." But what I said was, "Oh well, let's eat and talk about Carrie. That's what we have in common now. I presume you agree with joint custody, and I wonder if you've thought out when you will want her. I don't want a divorce. This is not my choice. It's just that this might be the real thing with Fred, and I need some time to find out, if it's the real thing." "Right, you said that before. However, the real thing that is upon you right now is divorce. I do envy your delusional state. New love is really, really great, although I must say it hasn't done much for your mental acuity. Now don't take this the wrong way. He obviously is something really special. What does he have that is so attractive?" "Chris, I'm not going there. No way will I compare him with you or vice versa. No, really, I'm not asking that. I am asking what is so attractive about him. Word of honor, I won't go off the deep end. Tell me." "Well, it's really not the sex. I mean, he's skilled at it. He's good, but not extraordinary, at least in my limited experience. Size-wise, he's ordinary as far as I know. But he has an amazing smell. It's not perfume or anything. It's his body. It has this sublime smell. He has a commanding personality. He's confident and in charge. He's so considerate, kind. He listens intently and comments intelligently on whatever I say. I just, feel protected. I want to please him. I probably would have done. I did do whatever I thought he wanted. And he seemed to know what I wanted. Not what I said I wanted, but deep down inside what I wanted, and had me do that. What I really wanted, but couldn't ask for. Then he is indeed a talented Don Juan. Well, God bless you and your ongoing quest. His bedside manner carries over into your bed. It makes me feel better to have gotten out of your way. And it's good for you too. No more lying, sneaking around. Now you can be open about your love. Chris, I really didn't want a divorce. That was your idea. For the love of Christ. It's my fault. She's nuts. Anyway, divorce it is. Ready or not, here it comes. And lest we forget, caring for our daughter is why we are talking tonight. You know I can't control my schedule. Why are you asking this? Carrie has to have some sort of stability in her life. She's not going to go to bed in your house and wake up in mine. She has to know who will get her to soccer practice next week Tuesday. She has to know in advance where she will be Saturday, if only so she knows who she can make plans to play with. So if you want scheduled time with her, when will it be? And what are you going to do about Carrie when you have her and one of the Syphilises calls you out? What are you going to do when you're running late? I'm not in a position to answer that now. This is still new to me. Do we have to do this now? As long as you're happy not having her with you. No? We need never mention it again. Yeah. Look, what we do in the next few days or weeks isn't forever. Things change. So for now, I gather you agree, reluctantly. She stays with me, and you visit as your time permits. You may not drop in for any reason. Call first. I need 24 hours notice of any change in plans. I just want you to know that I expect and need you to be her mother. Let's try to be civil to each other. And if we can't, then at least be civil in front of Carrie. I don't badmouth you to her and vice versa. That makes sense. On the rest, I'm between a rock and a hard place. I have to go along with this. At least things are going well in my other life. Good. I'm glad to hear it. Hope syphilis makes you happy. Sorry I couldn't. But then again, I've come to realize it was mutual. I would rather we had split without the adultery, but stuff happens. At least we both now have the prospect of good companionship. Well, I'm off. Chris, I didn't file for divorce. You did. Right, you keep on about that. You mean you really didn't expect it? You put the cuckold's horns on me. You placed the bomb, lit the fuse, and wonder why the dirt of divorce is raining down on you and our family. She was successfully fighting back tears as I blew her a kiss and walked out the door, leaving the hoagie wrapper, which reeked of oregano and garlic, on the table. Well, good. We all deserve happiness, her as well as me. I did get an amazing change of fortune later in the week. About 6 months earlier, I had submitted a Hail Mary bid to build a new middle school. The job was a good bit larger, make that way larger, than anything I had ever done before. And frankly, I thought my bid would be thrown out for that reason. I was high in price mostly because I didn't really trust my estimate. I added 15% to my actual estimate to cover for blunders. Came in a respectable third. My real estimate, the one without the 15%, was right between the top two contractors' bids. A few weeks later, that bank in New York, Lehman Brothers, went bust, and credit ceased. The high bidder on the school contract was a big, well-respected contractor. A few weeks ago, I had read that he had been indicted for bribing city officials, and the city threw out his bid. This Tuesday, the school department called me in for a conference to see if I could stand by my bid. The number 2 bidder had declared bankruptcy. Poof. Here one day, gone the next. Meanwhile, construction costs had dropped about 10% at that point, and I could foresee at least another 10% drop in the coming months as existing work was finished, but nothing much coming through because of the recession. Normally, they would have thrown out all of the bids and gone out for bid again. Unfortunately, that would have meant months of delay, and possibly the money would be appropriated for other projects or otherwise unavailable. Plus, the city and the school board wanted to show jobs in the city by November. The problem for me was financing, as I had hidden my cash for the divorce. I asked for a week to check the numbers in my bank. I spent 2 days with my estimators checking prices. The 20% drop in costs had already arrived. I wanted the local bank I had been dealing with. They were not going along until I explained the pricing drop. My bid price was $67 million. I had figured my cost originally at $61 million. My new cost was close to $50 million. They checked my numbers, and I got the financing. I was good to go. I was in the big time and stood to make over $15 million on this job. Sam, the detective, called me into Starbucks for a conference. He had sound and video on. Count them -12 women. My wife and one other were regulars, once or twice a week, and the others sprinkled in. We had to agree. Hale was extraordinary. I told Sam to keep it up. If nothing else, they were nice B-grade movies. On Friday night, I got a panic call from Karen. It seemed she couldn't pay her bills. She didn't understand them. So Carrie and I went over. Karen and I sat at the kitchen table, and Carrie played with the neighbor's kids. Chris, all these bills. I don't begin to have enough money to pay them. No kidding, Sherlock. It's called being bankrupt. You don't make enough money. Not counting the work I used to do around here that you'll now have to hire out, you're about $100,000 a year short. The best thing you can do is talk to a lawyer and file for bankruptcy. Don't make it out worse than it is. I'm a doctor. I can't be bankrupt. Okay, so pay your bills. Maybe Dr. Syphilis will pay you for services rendered. He probably gets better treatment from you than I ever did. I'm sorry, really. I generally can suppress my feelings. That is exactly what I should not say. Besides, if he's stuck around you this long, you're doing good, in bed and out. About money. Change jobs. Get a second job. You're a doctor. Somebody will hire you. Screw you. At a minimum, I need another $3,000 per month revenue stream, and a second job's out of the question. Actually, you need closer to $4,500 just to keep the grass mowed with no cushion. And that's with about nothing for spending money. You forgot taxes. So ask your partners for a raise. I need you to cough up some money. Did you read the prenuptials you and your dad made me sign? I don't owe you anything. Stop paying the mortgage. That's a start. Now you look, if I lose my house, I'll rip you apart in the divorce. You won't have a dime to your name, you idiot. Karen, this is unhelpful, all this squabbling about money. You really have no choice but to see a lawyer, declare bankruptcy, and dump the house. It's worth about $450,000 now, and you have a $600,000 first mortgage on it, and nearly another $100,000 second mortgage. If the bank dropped the mortgage by $300,000, or if they foreclosed on the property, that $300,000 would be forgiveness of debt and taxable to you. That's my best advice, but you need to see a lawyer. I won't give you money. I dutifully pay all the bills that I am obligated to pay, but nothing more. When our marriage had a chance of a future, I made sure you had enough money to live as you, not me, wanted to. You dumped me. I give money to charity, and that you're not. Oh, when you howl at how cruel bankruptcy laws are, remember that the money you and your dad gave to your congressman has come back to bite you. They have no mercy for those hopelessly in debt or the poor. And a last bit of advice, never declare war. Why warn the enemy? Rethink that bit about going after me. Thanks to your dad, you can't get me. Don't go there. I think we're done here. Let me call Carrie. She was livid. Carrie probably risked a burn when she kissed her mom goodbye, and the two of us went home. I got a call from her a couple of weeks later. She wanted a parley. Could I leave Carrie home and come over for dinner? I told her I would be there at 7 p.m., after supper. I really didn't want to eat at her table. In refusing her so easily, I realized I had only mild affection left for her, and I was getting good at seeing through her manipulations. The anger I felt for what she did to me remained, and probably would for years, but the beast was under control. Chris, thanks for coming over. As you know, I'm in the gutter financially. The house is going, but I don't know when. I haven't made any payments on it since you left. Whenever the bank shows up, I'm going to be living in a one-room apartment. I've broken off with him. Oh, the sweet-smelling syphilis. I take it you figured out you're just a collection of willing orifices to the good Dr. Hale. Isn't that the truth? If you knew. God. Everybody must have known. You know his name. Oh no, everybody must know. He's been seeing another woman. I loved him and was sure he loved me. Boy, did I fall on my face. At least you're lying good side up. What do you want from me? I want my family back. Hey, we've had this conversation before. You said you thought he was your real love, which also meant that I was not your real love. When you expected me to wear the cuckold's horns, you proved you didn't really know me. And for that matter, I realized that I didn't know you. I've thought about it a lot. If you can believe it, I realized I disliked you more than I loved you. The two of us together are our past, not our future. That Hale is not your future either doesn't change anything between us, so forget about it. Chris, the other thing I want is revenge on him. I really do. He led me on with a string of lies, and I want him to pay. Forget about revenge as well. Do nothing. You'll look like an idiot however it comes out. Doctors are supposed to be wise, discerning, stable professionals, not love-struck fools that jump on a ding-dong after a good line. And don't look for me to get him in a dark operating room and break his fingers. Karen, remember the Bible. Revenge is mine, saith the Lord. By the way, I forgot some books here. Mind if I look for them? Go ahead. They're wherever you left them. I haven't read a thing in months. That's another thing wrong with my life. It's mostly work. I love to read, and I haven't had time for a long time. I got a bag from the kitchen and collected a couple of novels, but it was the hospital anniversary book I was really after. I needed to do some research, and I remembered that they had group photos and names in it. I had a different idea to fry Hale, but no point in telling Karen. She would get some of the blowback. When I got home, going through the hospital book, I was able to identify 9 women, 2 doctors, 5 nurses, and 2 in administration. That left 3 unknowns. I called Sam Patel, and then the lawyer I used for the business. I had figured out that I didn't like being a big contractor talking to suits all day. I really liked to be close to the work, particularly historic restoration projects. I asked my lawyer to look around for a contractor who wanted to buy a business with a very good 3-year contract, virtually guaranteed to make money. I offered him 10% of the purchase price. As for Sam the Snoop, it cost another $3,000, but he got the goods on the unknowns. We met in a local coffee shop instead of Starbucks. New office, Sam. The coffee's better. Belongs to a client. A friend of mine knows one of the office persons and got the name of 2 of them right off the bat. Turns out they were patients of his. Plus, 2 of the ones we had names for were also patients of his as well. We made up a fake newspaper story about the 3rd one, doctored her picture so she had clothing on. My contact brought it into the office and got the last name. The last one was both a patient and a nurse in his downtown office. I also looked up address and family info. I bought a cheap laptop on Craigslist for cash, and one of my guys got me a stolen credit card in case I needed it. One of the local hotels has unsecured Wi-Fi, so I parked on the curb across the street so I could go online. I didn't have to pay anything, but more importantly, didn't have to give any identification. I logged into a blog site and set up an account in Hale's name. I then uploaded Hale's Special Posse, Part 1. The nice nurses' balloons that relieve my stress. I had each one topless in a portrait, with names linked to a 30-second sex video clip where both the woman and Hale were clearly identifiable. I then set up an email account. I used some software that allowed me to send individual emails to a whole group of people individually. That way, no one would know who else got the emails, so it looked like Hale sent Hale's Special Posse to them alone. No way they would not spread this bit of juicy gossip to people I didn't know. I used several email lists, so both private and hospital addresses were covered. I hit send. Round 1. A direct hit on Hale. Karen called about half an hour later. My God, Chris, do you know what that jerk Hale did? He sent me an email showing him screwing 5 of the nurses. Hale's Special Posse, he calls them. The nurses. I know all of them. 3 of them very well. Jesus, Karen, what guy could have an orgy with 5 women? What the heck could you do with that many? It would be a huge waste of a glory hole. Gotta be a fake picture. No, one at a time, but all in the same room at different times. My God, he's sick. He filmed it all. How could he do that? Great stamina to do 5 women in a day. No wonder you liked him. Kudos to him. Probably had installed 1 or more video cameras and taped the sex. May have broadcast the whole thing to a receiver in his car. Of course, he also would have broadcast it to anyone else within a few hundred yards around. Anyone could have recorded it. Do you recognize the room? Oh my God. Oh my God. It was the motel room we used. Oh my God. Right. He no doubt has pictures of you too. Maybe he is Hale's special posse. The doctors. Your 15 minutes of fame might be starting soon. That jerk. Somebody will kill him. He better not. Oh Jesus, what did I do to myself? Send me the link. I'd like to see it. Besides, I need to meet some willing women. Look, I gotta go. You're a pig, Chris. You're a pig. The next night the blog was gone. A censorship on the web. I set up another blog, and the next day sent out new links to Hale Dork's Dr. Doxy's eye. Same deal. Went at everybody individually. The rumor mill would be cranking. It would be unstoppable. Like clockwork, half an hour after I had sent it, Karen called in tears. That man, my picture, and a video of me riding him. Jesus, the phone had been ringing every 5 minutes. I'm going to kill the creep. Okay, give me the link. Look, don't say that. Somebody else will very likely kill him, saving you the trouble. People will recall your words. Remember, you dumped him well before his present troubles. I just emailed the link to you. Oh my God. What a loser. I clicked on the link. If she had deliberately sent a bad link, and if I let on I knew what was there before I saw the link, the jig would be up. She's not that devious, but you can't be too careful. Yup. There she was. Well, you certainly look good. Maybe Playboy will put you in the magazine. Oh, thanks. Our hospital and 2 others have temporarily pulled his privileges, so he's out of work for a while until they decide what to do. So far, the nurses are being looked at as victims. Now they can add some doctors to the list. Just what I needed. At least the stereotype of a female works in your favor this time. Poor deluded young doctor throws away her marriage and her reputation all for a cad. All that education. Such a waste. Screw you and the horse you rode in on. What am I going to do? No pun intended, just write it out. Keep out of the limelight. Don't give interviews or any public statements. Most of your patients will know nothing. Few to none will see the pictures. Your balloons are nice, but half the people in the world have a pair on their chest, and most of the ones that don't have ready access to someone else's. Few people outside of the hospital will see them. Nearly all will look casually and not much notice or remember the face. More important, you need to think about what to tell your daughter if she finds out. She started sobbing with that one. I don't know how you handle that. Hale is another matter. This stuff will blow Hale out of town before it blows over, so you can enjoy the revenge you wanted at no cost or risk. When I sent out Hale's pics and prurient patients, it was public proof he was screwing some of his patients. It was all over for him. He lost his license to practice medicine, was buried under a hail of lawsuits, and his wife divorced him. He fled town and reportedly works for an insurance company in Texas, probably figuring out how to deny coverage to the sick and dying. I wonder if having little status and less money changed his smell. I wrestled with giving myself permission to spend some of the pot of money I was making. My antique car friend assured me it was a good investment, so using him as a straw man, I bought the Indian Chief motorcycle, plus another one Hale had picked up for parts. I've always regarded them as organ donor specials and never ridden one, but it looked like fun. I had the brains to take lessons. I no longer coveted my brother's toy. I had the real thing. I called the Red Cross and asked if they had any more Give Blood t-shirts. They had none. I explained that I wanted one size small, new or used, and would give the Red Cross a check for $100 and a $20 bill for whoever dug one up. The woman I was talking to said that could be arranged, and we agreed to meet Friday night and make the buy. She seemed like a nice woman, and I told her what I planned to do with the t-shirt. We had a good laugh and exchanged email addresses. I took Carrie out, and among other clothes she needed, bought her a pair of red sneakers and gave her the t-shirt. A couple of days later, we rode on my bike over to Karen's house on the eve of the foreclosure. Carrie ran inside wearing the t-shirt and the red sneakers and hollered, "Mommy, look at Pop's motorcycle." We rode over here on it. Have you ever ridden on one as nice as this? Her eyes widened, and she mouthed, "Oh, I did once. Looking much like you, in fact. It was a fun ride while it lasted, but it was a big mistake because it ended in a crash. Chris, you better be careful on that." Karen actually sued me. Unfortunately for her, the prenuptial agreement held, and she got nothing from me, lost the house, and declared bankruptcy. However, not all debts are forgiven in bankruptcy, so I estimated it will be years of living cheap before she is free and clear. Nice guy that I am, I sent her father a $1,000 check, thanking him for his idea of a prenuptial agreement and how they saved me a fortune. He sent the check back with no comment. I sent it to a liberal advocacy group in his name and used his name as the donor. As part of the bankruptcy, my wife had to submit prior year's tax returns, so for the first time she really looked at the documents and saw what my income was the year we were divorced. She was aghast to see it was a lot higher than hers, to say nothing of the huge lump of cash I made from selling my business. She demanded to know why I hadn't told her. I pointed out I did show her. I pointed to her signature on every tax return. The amount of income was right there. It's just that she was so convinced she was the doctor, and I was a glorified handyman. She assumed our income was mostly from her practice. How often we look without seeing. It's just as well. You and your dad were really worried I was marrying you for your money. I think you liked the idea of bringing in the big bucks. It gave you power. Look at the bright side. You're young, good-looking, and, as I and much of the world have seen, much better in bed now than you ever were when you were with me. I'm sure you'll have your pick of prospective mates. A year later, I got rid of the motorcycle. It was fun, but I wasn't riding it enough to become a skilled rider and basically didn't enjoy it all that much. My friend was right, though. It was a good investment. I sold the parts bike for what I paid for the two and the good bike for double what I had paid for the lot. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.